Arrogant pilot refuses her entry until a general recognizes her face and steps aside. The arrogant pilot stood firm at the base gate, his voice sharp and dismissive as he refused entry to a quiet, weathered woman in military fatigues. "You don't belong here," he sneered, eyes flickering with contempt. What he didn't know was that Mara Kessler was no ordinary visitor. She was a decorated veteran of one of the nation's most elite special operations units, a woman who had faced death in silent battles few would ever understand. Her name was whispered with reverence in secret circles, a ghost who had carried comrades to safety and survived missions lost to history. When a high-ranking general unexpectedly recognized her face and stepped aside, the pilot's arrogance crumbled into stunned silence. This moment would spark a journey not just of personal redemption, but of reclaiming the honor of countless veterans forgotten in the shadows, an unyielding testament to strength, resilience, and the quiet dignity of service. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump in. The terminal smelled of jet fuel, overcooked eggs, and old leather. It was barely past dawn, and already the check-in area buzzed with the chaos of another military rotation. Uniforms pressed, boots laced tight, and orders clutched like passports. Everyone had somewhere to be, except her. She stood in line near the side entrance to the private runway, quiet, still, wearing a simple gray hoodie, faded jeans, and a pair of tan military boots that had seen more than just mud. Her silver hair was pulled back into a tight braid, a style that didn't ask permission and didn't beg attention. Over one shoulder, she carried a worn-out duffel. Not military issue anymore, but the kind stitched with memory, zippers stiff with desert sand, one strap fraying where it had been caught on barbed wire in Kandahar. No patches, no name tags, just a quiet presence. She wasn't here for attention. She never had been. Her name was Captain Mara Kessler once. Call sign, Valkyrie. She flew with the best. Ghost teams in the night. Medical extractions under mortar fire. Drone evasion in jungle canopies. But today she was just another invisible vet trying to make her way home. The airbase in New Mexico was hosting a memorial service for a downed SEAL team. One of them, Lieutenant Jared Vaughn, had been her co-pilot for 5 years. He was a brother to her in ways blood never could be. She'd gotten the call late. She didn't RSVP. She never did. She just came. The line moved forward. A young pilot leaned casually against the checkpoint podium. Early 30s. Flight suit unzipped just enough to show off the gym-hardened chest underneath. Aviator shades. Arrogance measured in wattage. He glanced her way as she stepped forward. "Sorry, ma'am," he said, smirking as he folded his arms. "This gate's for personnel cleared for classified operations or active duty transport, not for retirees." She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just handed him her folded clearance papers. He didn't take them. "I said this gate is for active clearance only. You can take the shuttle to the main lot. There's a bus for guests over there." She looked down at her boots, then back at him. No words, just patience. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand." But the voice that cut him off didn't come from her. It came from behind, gravelly, commanding. "Son, do you have any idea who you're talking to?" The young pilot turned, confused. A 4-star general, still in full dress uniform, approached from the corridor behind them. He wasn't rushing, but his presence commanded immediate respect. Staffers around him stopped moving. Even the air seemed to pause. The general looked at her, and his face softened, eyes almost gleaming. "Kessler," he said quietly, with reverence. And then, without another word, he stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. The room fell quiet, not out of fear, but respect. The kind that can't be demanded, only earned. The general's gesture was brief, but in it was a weight no metal could match. Mara gave a slow nod, eyes meeting his. There was no salute, no handshake, just understanding, the silent kind forged in years and battlefields. The young pilot stepped back, sheepish, his voice caught somewhere between apology and disbelief. I didn't know. "You weren't supposed to," the general said, without breaking gaze. And that's the difference. Mara walked through the gate. Not fast, not proud, just forward, like always. Inside the restricted terminal lounge, the air changed. No announcements blared. No tourists snapped photos. Just the quiet hum of classified departure boards and the low murmur of soldiers and specialists who didn't ask questions. They just did the job. She lowered herself onto a bench in the far corner. Her duffel hit the ground with a soft thud. Next to her, a pair of rangers sat, whispering over a map, barely giving her a glance. That was fine. She preferred it that way. But the general didn't leave. He stepped in beside her, sat down without asking, knees cracking audibly as he lowered himself. For a long while, neither said a word. Finally, he broke the silence. Jared spoke of you like you walked on clouds. Mara's throat tightened, but she said nothing. He said if anything ever happened, you'd come. Didn't know how. Didn't care. Said Valkyrie always finds a way to land where she's needed. She glanced at him, eyes calm. He say anything else? The general smiled, barely. Said you saved his life twice. And ruined his coffee preference forever. That drew the faintest smirk from her. A flicker of memory. Of dust storms, broken rotors, and makeshift espresso filters made from medical gauze. She hadn't thought about that in years. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a folded piece of cloth into her lap. It was Jared's team patch, torn at the edge, bloodstained at the corner. We pulled this from the wreckage, he said. I figured you had the right to carry it. She didn't touch it immediately, just stared. The threads looked older than they should. Or maybe she did. You know, he said quietly. I still remember the look on your face when we pinned your distinguished flying cross. You didn't smile. I didn't earn it alone, she said. No one ever does. He looked around the terminal, then back at her. Why didn't you come back? After the war, I mean. You could have run half the command here. Mara exhaled slowly, eyes distant. Because I didn't want a desk. I wanted silence. The general nodded, understanding more than she said. Well, silence followed you. But so did legacy. A buzz overhead interrupted the moment. The transport jet was landing. Engine hum growing louder. Time to board, he said. She stood, adjusted the duffel on her shoulder. And this time, he walked behind her, not in front. The ramp to the military transport plane hissed as it lowered to the tarmac, letting out a breath of compressed air and decades of memories. Mara stepped forward into the dry wind, her boots thudding softly against the metal, the general still a silent shadow a few steps behind. The aircraft was one of the newer models, sleek, armored, more comfortable than what she used to fly, but soulless somehow. The old birds creaked. They complained. They spoke to you when you listened. This one was silent, efficient, like war had gone sterile. Inside, the rows of seats were mostly filled with special forces and Black Ops personnel in transit, some in uniform, some in civilian gear. No one asked names. No one gave them. That was the rule. But as Mara passed down the narrow aisle, a few heads turned. One man nodded. Another, a sergeant with graying stubble, sat up a little straighter. They didn't recognize her by face. Most of them were too young. But something in her walk, her presence, was unmistakable, like the hum of a predator drone overhead. Quiet, unseen, but very, very real. She took the last row by the emergency exit and dropped into the seat like she'd never stopped flying. Her eyes stared out the small window, not seeing the desert, but something much further away, somewhere halfway across the world and 2 lifetimes ago. The engines roared to life. Across from her sat a young woman, barely out of training, maybe. Her uniform crisp, her hands clenched nervously around a folded piece of paper. Orders. Likely her first assignment. She peeked over at Mara and hesitated. Ma'am, she whispered, unsure. Were you with Delta? Mara looked at her. Once. The girl hesitated again, then said, They say women never made it through the old Tier 1 program. That it was just a myth. Mara studied her for a long second. Myth is just truth nobody believed. The young soldier blinked, caught between awe and embarrassment. Sorry, I didn't mean. It's all right, Mara said, softening her tone. The ones who believed didn't talk. The ones who talked didn't believe. The girl nodded slowly, as if receiving something sacred, then sat back, processing. The plane lifted. As they climbed into the endless blue, Mara's thoughts drifted again, not to war zones or glory days, but to the moments that never made the headlines. The late nights in Afghan outposts when Jared would hum old rock songs. The cracked photograph he kept in his vest, his daughter, Lucy, drawing stars on his helmet with a purple marker before each mission. He said it kept him safe. It didn't. Mara reached into her duffel and pulled out an old, folded envelope, creased and yellowed at the edges. Unopened. Addressed to her in Jared's handwriting. She hadn't read it. Not yet. Maybe today. Maybe not. Outside, the clouds broke into streaks of light. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. And for a moment, she was flying again. The wheels touched down with a jolt. A clean, confident landing at Hollister Military Airfield, a place Mara hadn't seen in over a decade. As the engines wound down, the hangar doors slowly opened to the blistering afternoon light of New Mexico. The desert wind whipped across the tarmac, tugging at uniforms, rattling loose straps and memories alike. Mara was the last to disembark, not out of hesitation, but habit. She waited for the others to move first, always had. A good pilot let the crew off before herself. A better one knew when to carry the weight. She stepped out into the heat. The base looked different now. New walls, cleaner signs, cameras where there used to be guards. But beneath the upgrades, the bones were the same. Same old stone perimeter. Same sharp smell of gun oil and sun-baked pavement. An officer met her at the edge of the hangar. A lieutenant, maybe 25. He stiffened when she approached, but didn't salute. He didn't know who she was. Just another guest, he assumed. Ma'am, shuttle's this way. They're holding the memorial briefing at 1500. Dress is formal. I don't see you on the official list. I'm not on it, she said simply. He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice called out before he could. Kessler. She turned. A tall woman in her early 50s jogged across the tarmac in heels, of all things. Her hair was regulation short, but touched with gray. Her voice carried authority, but her face lit up with something else, relief. Still as stubborn as ever, the woman said, pulling Mara into a sudden, brief hug. God, it's good to see you. Colonel Briggs, Mara said, allowing a half-smile. Didn't think they'd let you keep the uniform. Didn't ask, Briggs replied, then nodded to the stunned lieutenant. I'll take it from here. As they walked together toward the main building, Briggs' expression sobered. They recovered 5 bodies from the crash. Jared's was one of them. The rest were burned beyond ID. No black box, just fragments. We think it was sabotage. Mara didn't flinch. He was flying back from Syria? Classified drop-off. But yeah, last stop of his rotation. He wasn't even supposed to be on that bird. He took a shift for someone else. Of course he did. Briggs looked at her. He kept a folder. With letters. One for you. One for Lucy. You still haven't read it. Mara shook her head. Not yet. You might want to. Before today's over. They reached the briefing room. Inside, high-ranking officers murmured over documents, satellite photos glowing on digital displays. A few turned and stared when Mara walked in, then quickly looked away, some out of guilt, others out of awe. Briggs paused at the door. They'll be showing a memorial reel, then reading off names. Then, the flag transfer. Mara nodded. I won't speak. You don't need to, Briggs said. You already did. Every time you got someone home. The door shut behind her with a metallic click. The past was waiting. The room dimmed. Curtains drawn. Screens lit. Rows of chairs faced a large projector. Soldiers, officers, and quiet civilians filled the seats, some in dress blues, others in muted formal wear. All watching. All silent. The only sound was the soft whir of the projector spinning to life. Mara took a seat in the last row, her duffel at her feet, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She didn't need to see the video. She remembered every mission Jared had flown, every sound of rotor blades chopping through hostile skies, every time he tapped the dash twice before takeoff. Superstition he never broke. Still, she watched. The reel began with music, soft piano layered with strings. The screen showed sun-drenched training fields, helicopter rotors in slow motion, boot prints in sand, and flashes of names as they faded in and out. Then came faces. Young, strong, laughing. Faces now etched into stone. The kind of montage made for news stories. Except this wasn't for news. This was for memory. Jared appeared halfway through. Footage of him smiling with dirt on his face, yelling into a headset mid-flight, tossing a water bottle to a medic on the tarmac. Then a still photo. Him and Mara, back-to-back under the wing of a Black Hawk, desert wind flaring their jackets. That photo was never meant for public view. Someone had dug deep to find it. A murmur went through the room. That's her. The woman in the hoodie. Is that Valkyrie? The reel ended on a single image. The mission badge of Jared's final flight, overlaid with his team name, Reaper 2. Fade to black. Silence hung heavy. A colonel stood to address the room, his voice low and reverent. He spoke of honor, sacrifice, legacy, of missions completed and lives saved. He recited names, slowly, like prayers. Jared Vaughn's name came last. Mara didn't bow her head. She stared straight ahead. Then came the moment. The honor guard entered, for soldiers carrying folded flags draped in white cloth, each stepping with precision so sharp it felt choreographed by grief itself. When Jared's flag was brought forward, the presenting officer paused at the front row, scanning, looking for family. Lucy, Jared's daughter, stood quietly in a dark blue dress. 17 now. Hands shaking. Eyes red but dry. Briggs put a hand on her shoulder. The officer bent one knee and presented the flag to her. On behalf of a grateful nation. Mara watched from the back. Lucy glanced her way, as if drawn by something she couldn't explain. A pull. A presence. Their eyes met. In that brief connection, something passed between them. Not words. Not comfort. Understanding. Briggs leaned down and whispered something to Lucy. The girl turned, took a step forward, and walked down the center aisle, flag still in her arms, until she stood in front of Mara. Without asking, she placed the folded triangle into Mara's lap. You were his family, too, Lucy said. And then she hugged her. No one moved. The room had forgotten how to breathe. Officers in pressed uniforms, soldiers in dress blacks, family members clutching tissues. They all sat in still reverence as Lucy hugged the quiet woman in the back row. The girl's arms wrapped tight, like she was holding on to something she didn't want the world to forget. Mara didn't move at first. Her arms stayed at her sides, unsure. Then, gently, she returned the embrace. It wasn't long, just enough. When Lucy pulled back, her eyes searched Mara's face. He talked about you all the time, she whispered. But only when he thought I was asleep. Mara smiled faintly. He was a terrible liar. Lucy held back a tear. He said you saved him once in Somalia. That you disobeyed orders. I reinterpreted them, Mara corrected, her voice dry but soft. Lucy gave a broken laugh, then stepped back, letting her fingers linger on the edge of the flag. Thank you for being here. She returned to her seat beside Briggs, who gave her a reassuring squeeze on the hand. The room remained hushed. Then, slowly, the colonel at the podium cleared his throat. Captain Kessler, he hesitated, unsure. Would you like to say a few words? Heads turned. Mara didn't. The weight of silence was enough. But then she stood. Not fast. Not hesitant. She didn't walk to the front. She stayed where she was. When she spoke, her voice was steady. Clear. No microphone needed. I don't have words to match the men and women we lost. I couldn't even speak at my own father's funeral. But I'll say this. She looked across the room. At Lucy. At the brass. At the unknown faces who were only now learning who she was. Jared was the kind of pilot who didn't care if you outranked him. If you were bleeding, if you were trapped, if your radio was dead, he came. He always came. Even when it meant flying blind into the dark. She paused. Let the silence do the rest. And that kind of man doesn't die in vain. He lives in every rookie who double-checks the map. In every medic who doesn't quit under fire. In every child who learns that some heroes don't wear capes. They wear dust and scars and old boots. She sat back down. That was all. A beat. Then, slowly, the room applauded. Not loud. Not for show. Just hands clapping in rhythm, like a heartbeat returning to a still chest. Briggs exhaled beside Lucy. Told you she wouldn't need a podium. The general from the gate stood silently in the back. He didn't clap. He simply watched her with the kind of expression only commanders wear when they know they're in the presence of a living legend. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Mara sat alone again, flag across her knees, eyes locked on the now dark screen. Her fingers brushed over the triangle's edge, then drifted to her duffel. Inside, the letter waited. Still sealed. Still patient. The hallway outside the memorial room had gone quiet. Most had filed out. Some to reception tents, others to their quarters, and a few to stare out across the endless line of flagpoles swaying in the wind. Mara didn't join them. She sat on a wooden bench near the shadow of an old commemorative plaque dedicated to the fallen who never fell alone. The metal was sun-warmed, the names etched with reverence. In her lap, the envelope rested. Folded. Faded. Jared's handwriting was instantly recognizable. Quick. Slightly tilted, the loop of the K in her name curling like a pilot's wing. He never wrote in cursive, said it slowed him down. She stared at it, her thumb tracing the edge. For a long moment, she thought about putting it back, saving it for later, for a day when the grief didn't sit so high in her chest. But there would never be such a day. She broke the seal. The paper crackled as it unfolded, creased from being opened and refolded dozens of times by someone's unsure hands. Probably the general. Maybe Briggs. Someone had read it. Someone had waited. Mara began reading. Mara, if you're reading this, then I've gone and done something stupid. Again, I never was good at safe landings. You always warn me. I won't waste this space saying thank you, because if I started, I'd never stop. But there are things I once said. Things I didn't know how to say out loud, because you were always so damn composed. You made silence a kind of art. You saved me, Mara. Not just the bullets and rotors kind of saving. I mean really saved me. When I came home broken after Kandahar, when I couldn't sleep, when my hands shook and my voice disappeared, you were there. You taught me how to breathe again. You never said a word. Just flew. I followed your flight path, Valkyrie. Always. There's a girl, Lucy. She's stronger than she thinks. If I don't make it home, tell her who you are. Not the medals, not the missions, the real you, the one who gives a damn even when no one's looking. She's going to need someone like that. There are a dozen more letters in this file. One to the team, one to Mom, one to the guy who kept stealing my MREs and never confessed. But this one's yours. Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for flying in when everyone else pulled out. And thank you, Mara, for always being the storm that carried others home. I'll see you up there. Jared. The letter trembled in her hands, though Mara herself didn't. Her breath caught in her throat, not with grief, but with memory. The sound of his laugh, the scratch of his voice through static. That awful playlist of 80s ballads he insisted on during every extraction run. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her jacket pocket, close to her chest. Then, for the first time in a long while, she whispered aloud. Clear skies, Jared. And meant it. The sun dipped low over Hollister Airfield, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Most of the guests had left. The command staff dispersed. Only a few scattered maintenance crews and silent silhouettes remained, moving between hangars like echoes from another time. Mara didn't leave with the crowd. She walked alone. Each step took her further from the memorial room and deeper into the older side of the base, the part no longer shown to recruits. Buildings faded by sand and wind. Corridors with peeling paint. Old ghosts lived here. And so did memory. She found it by instinct. Hangar 3. The place where she and Jared prepped their first unofficial mission. Where they tore apart a Black Hawk rotor with nothing but chewing gum and field tape to get a medevac bird flight ready. Where she first realized that war wasn't about orders. It was about who came back and who didn't. She pulled open the heavy side door. The smell hit her first, machine oil, canvas, and time. Inside, the hangar was dim, streaked with light from narrow high windows. A single helicopter sat half-covered in tarp. Retired. Grounded. Like her. Mara walked to it. She ran her fingers along the fuselage. Dust clung to her skin. The bird had seen fire. Patches in the hull still bore shrapnel scars. On the tail, the faded remains of a painted emblem. Reaper 2. This was it. This was Jared's last bird. They were going to scrap it. Came a voice behind her. Mara turned. Colonel Briggs stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Her eyes softer now, her face carrying that same ache, the kind only found in people who've survived too many funerals. I made a call, Briggs continued. Told them it wasn't right. Not yet. Mara didn't respond, but her eyes thanked her. Briggs stepped forward and handed her a small, rusted key. What's this? Compartment locker. Rear of the cargo bay. Jared welded it himself. We never opened it after the crash. Thought maybe it was personal. Mara hesitated, then walked around to the rear of the bird. She found the panel, barely visible beneath soot and grime. Inserted the key. Turned. With a soft click, it opened. Inside, a weathered leather binder, an old photo, and a folded scrap of paper. She pulled out the photo first. It was of them, Mara, Jared, and 2 other squad mates she hadn't thought about in years, all crammed into a tiny field tent, drenched in mud, grinning like idiots. Jared's arm draped over her shoulder, her eyes squinting into the sun. You could almost hear the laughter. On the back, in faded ink, we fly together. We fall together. But we rise alone. She touched the image like it might disappear. Briggs stepped back, giving her space. And Mara stood there, alone with the past, surrounded by steel, sand, and silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel like a void. It felt like a vigil. Evening draped itself over the base like a worn-out blanket. Soft, quiet, familiar. Hollister's floodlights buzzed to life in the fading dusk, casting long beams across the tarmac. Mara walked alone, leaving Hangar 3 behind, her duffel once again slung across her shoulder. But now it felt heavier, not with weight, but with meaning. She passed through a side corridor toward the barracks, drawn by memory more than direction. The walls were lined with faded motivational posters, yellowing maps, and racks of old photos. Faces stared out, some young, some battle-hardened, all frozen in time. She paused at one. A sepia photo, a group shot from 20 years ago. Tier 1, Delta Detachment. 12 operators, unmarked uniforms, desert glare in their eyes. And there, second from the right, stood a younger Mara Kessler. Shorter hair, same posture, same quiet storm behind the eyes. No caption, no plaque, just her, half-shadowed, half-forgotten. Hey, she turned. A young airman, a crew chief by the grease on his fatigues, stood in the corridor. He looked puzzled, curious. You're not supposed to be in this section, he said, not rudely, just by the book. Mara didn't respond, just turned her gaze back to the photo. The airman stepped closer, squinting at the image. Whoa, that you? She didn't answer. You're the one from the memorial. The one the general stopped for. Still, no reply. Then the young man's eyes shifted. Something had caught his attention. A loose thread on Mara's sleeve had tugged loose. The motion revealed a faded tattoo on her left shoulder, just above the bicep, weathered, but still clear. An eagle, talons drawn, diving through a pair of crossed blades. Delta Force. The airman's expression changed. Completely. I didn't know women served in Delta that far back, he murmured. They didn't, Mara said quietly. Officially. A pause. Then, damn. She nodded toward the hallway. Get where you need to be, son. He backed away, slowly, nodding with sudden, deep respect. Yes, ma'am. He didn't ask her name. Didn't need to. As he left, another figure stepped out from the shadows. This one older. Taller. Full uniform. It was the general again. You always had a way of leaving people speechless, he said. Mara turned slightly, acknowledging him with a glance. He walked up beside her, eyes landing on the same photograph she'd paused at. They still don't list your unit, he said. They never will, she replied. You ever regret it? Not once. He smiled faintly, then added, You know, when I first took command, I kept a file on you. Just in case. Just in case what? Just in case I ever forgot what courage looks like. She let that hang for a moment. Then, without warning, he extended his hand. Not for protocol, not for show, but for respect. And for the first time since she'd landed, Mara took it. A quiet shake. A silent salute. Because sometimes, honor isn't about being remembered. It's about never needing to remind anyone who you are. The next morning brought a different kind of stillness. Not the tense silence before a mission. Not the haunted quiet after a memorial. This was the pause between storms. The breath before whatever comes next. Mara sat outside the old chow hall beneath a rusted awning. A tin cup of coffee cooling beside her. She didn't drink it. Not yet. She just sat, back straight, boots planted, watching the base come back to life. Trucks rumbled. Recruits marched. Helicopters lifted in distant staggered thumps, like heartbeats reminding her the world kept moving, with or without her. She heard the footsteps before she saw her. Lucy. Same dark blue dress as the day before, but with a green army jacket over it. A little big. A little worn. Probably Jared's. It swallowed her frame, but she wore it like armor. Mind if I sit? Mara nodded toward the empty bench beside her. Lucy dropped into the seat, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, neither spoke. He never told me much, Lucy finally said, staring at the gravel. About what he did. About what you did. Mara said nothing. I found an old flash drive in his stuff, Lucy continued. It was labeled Valkyrie. I thought maybe it was music. But it was footage. Declassified clips. Ops. Training runs. Night vision. Some of it was him. Some of it was you. Mara raised an eyebrow slightly. Lucy looked at her. You carried him out of a crash. With a dislocated shoulder. You stitched his leg in the dark while the LZ was under mortar fire. He was heavy, Mara said, her voice like gravel with a hint of warmth. Lucy gave a tight smile, then pulled something from her pocket. A folded photo, printed from the flash drive. It showed Mara standing on the skids of a Black Hawk, one hand gripping the frame, the other reaching down toward a wounded operator. Her face was smeared with dirt, eyes locked forward, unflinching, unmovable. You look like a ghost, Lucy said. Like a myth, but real. Mara stared at the image for a long time, then handed it back. Why didn't he tell me more? Lucy asked. Why didn't you? Because stories like that come with ghosts, Mara said. And ghosts don't make good bedtime stories. Lucy nodded slowly. But they make good lessons. Then she reached into her jacket pocket again and pulled out something small. Metal, worn, almost invisible unless you knew what it was. A single pair of wings. Not standard issue. Handmade. Edges slightly bent. Jared's. I want you to have them, Lucy said. Mara held them in her palm, feeling the weight. Infinitely small, impossibly heavy. I don't need a statue, Lucy said. I don't need flags or bagpipes. But people should know who you are. What you did. What you still carry. I'm not a symbol, Mara replied softly. No, Lucy said. You're something better. Mara looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time since Jared's death, she felt something that wasn't grief. She felt legacy. The sun blazed high over Hollister Airfield, casting sharp shadows across the base's aging concrete walkways. The heat was relentless, pressing against every surface like a silent adversary. Mara moved through the corridors with the steady rhythm of someone who had learned patience the hard way. Each footstep was deliberate, carrying the weight of years that didn't show on her face but were etched deep into her bones. Around her, the base buzzed with life. Soldiers drilled in formation, their boots pounding in sync with orders barked by sharp voices. Medics hustled between tents, tending to scraped knees and strained muscles. Commanders huddled over maps dotted with pins and flags, planning movements, coordinating missions. The hum of activity felt like a distant storm to Mara, familiar, relentless, yet somehow detached. As she passed by, several young veterans paused mid-conversation, their eyes flicking toward her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Some whispered among themselves, casting respectful glances that spoke volumes without words. Mara's reputation, Valkyrie, lived on among the ranks, though she was more of a shadow than a legend to most. Her path led to a modest building tucked away on the edge of the base, marked simply Veteran Support Services. The door was cracked open, and inside, a woman rose to greet her. The counselor's face was kind, her eyes reflecting the understanding of someone who had seen the invisible wounds carried by so many. "Mara," the woman said gently, stepping forward. "We've been expecting you." Mara inclined her head, voice quiet but resolute. "I'm here to help." The counselor nodded. "There are many like you, veterans who came home but never really left the battlefield. PTSD, chronic pain, the struggle to find purpose in a world that's moved on. You're not alone." Mara's jaw tightened, a flicker of old pain surfacing. She had carried those battles silently for years. "Hope," she whispered, "is a mission that never ends. That's why we're here," the counselor replied. "To remind you that it's worth fighting for." Later, Mara found herself in the base courtyard where a small circle of veterans had gathered. Their faces told stories of hardship and resilience, shadows of battles both seen and unseen. They welcomed her wordlessly, the unspoken bond between those who had walked through fire. She settled into the circle, drawing strength from the shared presence. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and steady, carrying the weight of truth. "The hardest fight," she said, "isn't out there in the chaos of battle. It's here." She placed a hand over her chest, near her heart. "It's in the moments when no one is watching, when the silence is loudest and the pain feels endless." A young soldier leaned forward, eyes bright with hope and desperation. "How do you keep going when everything inside feels broken?" Mara met each gaze with quiet conviction. "You keep going because you fight for something bigger than yourself, for the ones waiting for you to come home, for every small victory that no one sees but you. Every morning you choose to stand again is a mission completed." The circle absorbed her words, the air thick with unspoken gratitude and resolve. For the first time in many years, Mara felt the crushing weight in her chest ease, not because the past was forgotten, but because it was finally shared. She wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep flying. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden rays over Hollister Military Base, painting the worn concrete and weathered walls with a soft, amber glow. Mara's boots crunched gently on the gravel path as she made her way toward the small memorial garden nestled quietly between the barracks and the mess hall, a hidden sanctuary away from the bustle and noise of military life. This was no grand monument, no towering statue or inscribed marble, just a simple circle of smooth river stones arranged carefully around a weathered flagpole, its base etched with the names of fallen comrades. A lone mesquite tree spread its sparse branches above a wooden bench, offering shade and quiet refuge. Mara paused, letting the warmth of the sun settle on her shoulders as her fingers brushed the cool metal of the flagpole. The stars and stripes fluttered gently in the breeze, worn but unyielding, a testament to the resilience of those who served under it. She lowered herself onto the bench, the worn leather binder resting in her lap, the same binder she had found inside the locked compartment of Jared's helicopter. The edges of its pages were frayed, the ink faded, yet each photograph and handwritten note within carried the unmistakable weight of history and sacrifice. As she turned the fragile pages, her mind drifted to the faces that smiled back at her, faces of men and women who had flown into danger, who had watched over each other through sleepless nights and perilous missions. Ghosts of firefights and midnight rescues, whispers of courage and heartbreak beneath foreign skies. Each picture a silent reminder of lives lived fully and sometimes lost too soon. The soft padding of footsteps approached behind her. Mara looked up as Lucy stepped quietly into the garden. The girl's casual clothes contrasted with the military world around them, but her expression was steady, an unspoken strength born of pain and hope. Lucy sat down beside Mara without a word, her presence calm and comforting. After a moment, she broke the silence. "I read the letters," Lucy said softly, eyes fixed on the sky above the mesquite leaves. "They helped me understand him. And you?" Mara nodded, voice low and steady. "It's hard to carry a legacy when you don't know its weight." Lucy turned to look out over the garden, determination lighting her eyes. "I want to help carry it. For him. For all of you." A breeze stirred the flag above, lifting it gently like a silent salute. Mara rose slowly, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the fleeting kind, but the kind that anchors you to the future. We're not just memories, she said softly, standing tall beneath the mesquite's shade. We're the future, the ones who keep going when the world tries to forget. Lucy smiled, her voice warm. Then let's make sure no one forgets. Together, under the golden light of the setting sun, they stood united, 2 generations bound by loss, honor, and an unspoken promise to carry the torch. The garden held its silence, bearing witness to a quiet tribute that would echo far beyond the stones and time. The next morning dawned with a crispness that bit softly at the edges of the rising sun. The base stirred to life around Mara. Boots echoed on pavement, engines hummed to readiness, and distant commands cut through the morning air like sharp blades. But amidst this routine buzz, there was a palpable undercurrent of something different. A subtle tension that spoke of change, not loud, but persistent, like the slow gathering of a storm. Mara's path led her toward the command center, a place she had avoided for years, haunted by memories and the weight of unspoken truths. Today, however, the heavy oak doors stood open, and a figure waited by the entrance, stern, composed, with a presence that commanded respect without demanding it. The general who had stepped aside for her at the gate yesterday was there again. His eyes, sharp and searching, locked onto Mara's as she approached. "Captain Kessler," he said, his voice low but steady, carrying the weight of years and battles seen and unseen. Mara gave a slight nod, her posture straight, but the flicker of surprise in her eyes betrayed the guarded caution beneath her calm exterior. "I wanted to speak with you before your departure," he continued, motioning toward a shaded alcove nearby. "There are things that can only be said in quiet." They moved away from the chatter of the base, finding a pocket of stillness beneath the broad leaves of a mesquite tree. The general's gaze was unwavering, his expression grave yet sincere. "You've been overlooked for too long," he began. "Not because you lacked courage or skill, but because the world often fails to see the quiet warriors, the ones who carry their burdens without fanfare." Mara remained silent, listening. "I've kept files on many operators over the years," he said, "but yours was different. You embodied resilience in its purest form, the kind that doesn't ask for applause or medals. I regret not knowing sooner." A moment passed between them, words unspoken, histories acknowledged in the space between. Mara finally spoke, her voice steady but soft. "Recognition was never my goal." The general nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "No, but justice is." He paused, then pressed on. "There's a new initiative being launched to honor veterans who have been forgotten, whose sacrifices have remained in the shadows. Your story will be central to it." Mara absorbed his words. Relief mixed with determination stirred inside her chest. "Will you join us?" he asked. "Not as a symbol, but as a guide, to lend your voice to those who still need to be heard." She met his gaze, unwavering. "If it means giving strength to the unseen, then yes." The general extended his hand. Mara took it, a silent pact forged in mutual respect and shared purpose. Around them, the base continued its ceaseless rhythm, soldiers training, helicopters lifting, the endless motion of life. But for Mara, something had shifted. A new chapter had begun. In the days that followed, Mara moved through the base with a new sense of purpose, quiet but unmistakable. The weight she had carried for years seemed lighter now, buoyed by the general's initiative to bring the stories of forgotten veterans into the light. It wasn't about medals or public accolades. It was about truth, honor, and the strength found in shared history. Inside a conference room bathed in afternoon sunlight, Mara sat among a group of veterans, military historians, and support staff. The walls were covered with maps, photographs, and faded letters, evidence of battles fought in the shadows, sacrifices made beyond the public eye. The atmosphere buzzed with quiet determination, a collective energy that spoke of healing and justice. One by one, the veterans shared their stories, tales of missions shrouded in secrecy, of battles fought alone or in small teams, of pain endured and courage shone away from the spotlight. Mara listened, sometimes offering a nod, sometimes a brief word of encouragement. But mostly, she absorbed the gravity of each testimony, feeling the deep bond that united them all. Lucy was there as well, now officially part of the program. Her presence was a bridge between generations, a reminder that legacies weren't just memories, but living, breathing missions passed down. Her fierce spirit honored her father and all who served silently beside him. Mara found herself stepping into the role of mentor, guiding younger veterans struggling to find their place in civilian life. She shared lessons learned not only from combat, but from the long journey of resilience that followed. Her calm presence became a lifeline for many, a symbol that survival was possible and dignity could be reclaimed. One afternoon, under a sky so vast it seemed endless, Mara spoke quietly to a group of recruits gathered at the edge of the base. Her voice was steady, carrying the weight of experience without pretense. "Service isn't just the battles you fight on the field," she said. "It's the way you carry your scars, your memories, your brothers and sisters in arms. It's how you move forward when the fighting's done and the world expects you to disappear." The recruits listened intently, drawn to the quiet power in her words. As the sun began its slow descent, casting the base in golden light, Mara stood alone for a moment, gazing toward the horizon. The past was heavy, but the future held promise. This new mission, of remembrance, respect, and support, wasn't just about honoring those who'd served. It was about making sure no one was left unseen again. The wind whispered past her, carrying echoes of old battles and hopes yet to be fulfilled. For the first time in years, Mara felt a peace that wasn't fragile. It was steady, real. Weeks had passed since the initiative was announced, but the weight of it all was about to crystallize in a moment Mara never expected. The base was alive with an energy that felt different, less about orders and drills, and more about remembrance and respect. The ceremony was simple, dignified, and carried a gravity that stretched far beyond the grounds it occupied. Under a pale, overcast sky, the gathering formed, a mixture of veterans, families, commanders, and military personnel. The flag above rippled gently in the soft breeze, casting slow-moving shadows on the crowd below. There was a quiet reverence in the air, as if everyone present understood the significance of what they were witnessing. A public acknowledgement of those who had served unseen, those who had fought battles in the shadows, and those whose sacrifices had been overlooked by history. Mara stood near the front, flanked by Lucy. Both wore jackets heavy with meaning, patched, worn, and threaded with memories of service. The jacket Mara wore carried the faded insignia of Delta Force, a symbol few could recognize, but that bore stories far deeper than medals. The general stepped to the podium first. His voice was steady and commanding, yet filled with warmth and respect. He spoke of valor and resilience, of battles fought not just in distant deserts, but within the hearts of those who returned home forever changed. He recounted stories of quiet courage, naming those who had long been forgotten by the world outside these walls. Medals were presented with careful ceremony. Photographs flickered on screens behind him, frozen moments of laughter, grit, and humanity amidst chaos. The crowd listened, their applause respectful and measured, like a heartbeat finally syncing with the rhythm of forgotten warriors. When Mara's name was called, a hush fell over the assembly. She rose with a steady grace, each step deliberate, the weight of years settling on her shoulders like an old cloak. Approaching the podium, she allowed herself, briefly, to feel the magnitude of the moment, not as a solitary hero, but as a voice for countless others whose stories remained in the shadows. Her speech was brief but powerful. She spoke of bonds forged in silence, of battles waged beyond public view, and of the strength in honoring truth and memory. She thanked those who served and those who continue to carry the burden of remembrance. Her words resonated deeply, each syllable a testament to resilience and dignity. As she stepped down, Lucy took her hand, a gesture brimming with unspoken promises, past pain entwined with future hope. The crowd's applause grew, not loud or boisterous, but steady and profound. It was the sound of a nation waking to its forgotten heroes, the rhythm of respect finally earned. Later, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Mara and Lucy stood quietly by the flagpole. The flag fluttered softly in the evening breeze, the colors glowing warmly in the fading light. Mara looked at Lucy, voice low but certain. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Lucy smiled, eyes bright with resolve. "We'll carry it forward. For them. For all of us." Together, beneath the dimming sky, they stood, a living testament to honor reclaimed, dignity restored, and a legacy renewed. The ceremony had passed, folding itself into the fabric of memory like a soft, fading melody, one that lingered quietly, long after the last notes had drifted away. The bass slowly returned to its relentless rhythm, the steady drone of helicopters overhead, boots striking pavement in formation, orders given and executed with disciplined precision. But for Mara, the world around her had subtly shifted, and she herself was no longer the shadow she had once been. She moved through the familiar corridors with a newfound presence, visible, acknowledged, quietly powerful. The nods she received from veterans and soldiers alike were no longer polite formalities, but genuine gestures of respect and gratitude. Young recruits sought her out, eager to hear stories not of glory or battlefield heroics, but of endurance, resilience, and the quiet dignity of those who serve without fanfare. In the cool evenings, Mara often found her way to the small memorial garden nestled between the barracks and mess hall. The lone mesquite tree stretched its branches protectively over a weathered bench, the same bench where she had once sat alone, wrapped in silence and memories. Now it welcomed others, veterans grappling with invisible wounds, young soldiers seeking solace, families searching for understanding. They came, drawn by the calm strength she radiated. Lucy was frequently by her side, bridging the gulf between generations with a connection forged in shared loss and hope. Their conversations were soft and thoughtful, about legacy, about healing, about the future they were determined to shape together. Mara's leather binder, the worn, fragile collection of photographs, mission notes, and faded letters, had become something far greater than a personal keepsake. It was now a cornerstone of the new Veterans Program, carefully digitized and preserved by the support team. Each page told a story of sacrifice and courage, resilience and heartache. It was a living archive, a beacon for those whose sacrifices might otherwise have been forgotten. No longer did Mara carry the weight of invisibility. Instead, she bore the quiet honor of those who serve unseen, whose bravery is not measured in medals or headlines, but in the steady, unyielding commitment to duty, whether on the battlefield or in the silence that follows. One evening, as the sun dipped low beyond the distant desert hills, Mara sat beneath the mesquite, the fading light casting long shadows across the ground. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, carrying with it the whispers of countless untold stories. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, letting the memories wash over her, not with sorrow, but with a profound sense of peace. She remembered faces, comrades lost and found, battles fought in the dark, moments of quiet courage that would never make the history books. She thought of the heavy silence after the firefights, the weight of grief and survival intertwined. But more than anything, she felt gratitude. Gratitude for the strength she had found within herself, for the connections forged through shared pain and honor, and for the new chapter unfolding, not just for her, but for all who had walked this difficult path. The world outside might never fully comprehend the sacrifices made in shadows, the battles waged without applause or recognition. But here, among those who remembered, Mara had finally found her place. Her story was no longer hidden. It had become a beacon, a quiet reminder that true strength often lies not in loud declarations or public acclaim, but in the steady, resolute courage to stand tall, day after day, often when no one is watching. And as the stars began to emerge in the vast desert sky, Mara opened her eyes and smiled softly. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt whole. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.